weird because you can't see people.
And on the count of three, everybody run back to your fantasy. And on the count of run back to your fantasy.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. DJ Caitlin, thank you for that really smooth fading out of the Spotify playlist. It's really nice to see so many of you here and kind of lighting up our chat here. Feel free to like keep adding to the chat box. I know some people have not been able to drop into the chat box yet. So once you have a chance to, please do. We love like reading the chats and just kind of knowing like who's in the room. And it's really nice to see so many people here who are not in mine and Amber's class because they are required to be here. Hi guys, thank you for being here. But it's really, really awesome to see people who are from the community who are coming in to join us on this collective journey. Caitlin named it, I love this, being in pursuit of our full humanity and shared liberation. It's just like, oh my God, damn. That sounds amazing. So this is our second career panel, and I'm excited that 3 of our panelists from last semester have returned for a part 2. Last year, or rather last semester, just in spring, our students who were able to catch that panel noted a lot of really, a lot of feelings that, you know, Caitlin, Amber, and I were hoping that they would get. They felt really inspired by the panelists last year. They felt enlightened, grateful, but also honored to hear each panelist's career journey. Specifically, this was because they were all kind of struggling with the same things. They're struggling with doubt, they're struggling with expectations and worry. So it was a much needed conversation. And it was really great to hear a lot of this, the Kapwa students from last year kind of express a lot of these emotions that they were feeling. And then they had elders in the community to kind of talk to about it and to hear the elders kind of talk about their own struggles, like switching majors, starting with one job and then ditching that for another, figuring out like at some point you can't let your family rule everything and that you have to follow your own heart. But that's also not saying that there isn't obstacles with that either. So it was a really nice and refreshing conversation to have the elders be very vulnerable with the students, and the students felt very comfortable to be vulnerable with them. So before I hand off this conversation to our inspiring, Kapwa alum, Andrew, I just wanted to read a little note or uplift a letter or part of a letter that another Kapwa alum said last year when she was talking about the panelists. I don't think she's here. Let me see. I wonder if she would recognize what she said. Oh, she's not here. I'm sure she'll be fine that I'm sharing this. So basically what she said, I think sums up what Caitlin, Amber, and I hope is a takeaway for our students. And she says it really poignantly. So let me find my notes. Here they are. Okay. So this was addressed to the panelists from last spring. I feel like all of the messages that you each conveyed to us was very important to take in at this specific moment in my life. Each of you all come from different backgrounds with different paths of life, yet somehow your stories are all relatable to those around you. It is such a powerful sight to see people that one identifies as sharing with us how they all made it to where they are today and how they each openly share that the struggles and hardships will always be there. It is just up to you how you react. But that was our Kapwa alum last year and how moved she was by the panelists. So essentially, I'm not just inspired by the folks who showed up here today on the panel, but I'm also inspired by our students and what they tend to glean from all these events and their time at Mesa. So I hope that you feel inspired too, wherever you are at this point in your life. Perhaps you are already in your career. Perhaps you're still trying to figure it all out. Either way, I hope that whatever the panelists talk about today will touch you in some way. So thank you so much again for being here. And now Andrew is going to lead us in the land acknowledgement.
Yes, thank you so much, Darylo. And hi, everyone. Welcome for our panel today. I hope you all are excited and willing to learn and take something out. And yeah, to get started today, I will be leading our land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we are holding this event on the land of the treaty territory of the Kumeyaay First Nation. At the heart of our learning community is the indigenous Filipino concept known as Kapwa, caring for the other as oneself. Thus, as settlers and immigrants, we honor their land, tending to this ancestral soil with light and healing. We acknowledge, protect, and uplift the humanity of our indigenous and Black sisters and brothers because it is our humanity too. We are whom we are connected to.
Jen, would you like to introduce Andrew? Oh, you muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for that, Andrew. Andrew Arevalo is a peer navigator and our Kapwa liaison. He's also going to be our student moderator for today. He's a Filipino-American student majoring sociology at San Diego Mesa College. And a year ago, he attended the Speak Out Youth Summit, a virtual summit focused on fighting racial injustice. From that event, Andrew became inspired, which led him to creating a teach-in presentation on inclusion and raising awareness on the importance of providing equal access, opportunities, and resources for people and students with special needs and learning disabilities. Andrew is part of the K2 cohort of the Kapwa learning community. He's also part of Cruise and a member of the Asian Pacific Diversity Club here at Mesa. So he's going to be guiding us on with this talk. And yeah, can I take it? Can Andrew take it away now?
Yeah. Again, sorry. Thank you so much, Derillo. And again, for introducing me. Again, I'm Andrew Revlo, and I remember just a year ago, I was just adjusting to the pandemic with my first year of college, Mesa, learning more about Kapwa, and now I'm facilitating this panel, which is super amazing. I just like to thank again Professor Derillo, Alatorre, and Caitlin for this opportunity. And like I said, you all are in for an awesome event today. So we didn't have a panel like this very early on in our semester last year. So I highly recommend you all to take advantage of this opportunity as our panelists are taking the time out of their day to come to speak with us and share their insights, backgrounds, and stories. And yeah, these panelists are some of the people that have inspired me throughout the year. And their stories are so amazing. So I hope you all can take something away from them today. So next we are going to introduce our panelists for today. So panelists, if you could please briefly share your background, intersectional identities, and anything else you would like to share. So Rizzhel, would you like to go first? And then Rizzhel and Kandi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rizzhel Javier, but you can call me Riz. And my pronouns are she, they. And I'm an artist and educator in the region, born and raised San Diego and Mira Mesa. And I currently work at the Aja Project as managing director.
I'm assuming it's on me now. Hi, everyone. I am Virtual Ramos, he, him, his. As I stated in the chat, I was born in the Philippines and I was raised in San Diego, more specifically Paradise Hills. I currently work for PolicyLink as one of the social media managers, as the social media manager right now. And yeah, I'm very excited to learn from all of you all and hopefully address some of these questions that came up on the Padlet through some of these answers. And if not, I'll be sure to answer them on the Padlet after the panel.
Hi everyone, I am Kandi. Pronouns are they and she. Currently reside in Kumeyaay land. but born and raised from Lenape, New York City. And for visual description, I am wearing a black shirt, sitting in front of a sliding glass door with shades in my kitchen. And I'm excited and grateful to be here with you all today.
Awesome. Thank you all for your wonderful introductions and the work and activism that you do for the community. And yeah, so we'll just get started with our panel for today. So for the first question for today, I'd like to start off with, it's kind of a lot, there's multiple parts to this question. So what are your primary influences for choosing this path to uplift your communities? How do you define success for yourself in your career and in your life? And what values do you consider the most important in this work that you do? Again, in the same order, Rizzhel, Rizzhel, and then Kandi.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, well, definitely my lived experiences have been my biggest influences, right? And thinking about my own experience going to college and things that I dealt with my family. So, for example, going to school, I had very few teachers of color. So it was like very strange to take like classes in ethnic studies and things like that with not having like a person of color in the classroom. I went to school like in Northern California for undergrad, which at the time, like I was very foreign. And I went to school and people were like staring at me. So, and I'm not that old, like I'm not that much older, like even from then, right? And so I'm just thinking that that wasn't that long ago. And so, I know for me, picking a career where I could be a representative, so that that experience doesn't have to happen to like another person after me, right? And so I think my lived experiences in college, I wanted to make sure like, oh, I want to see more people of color there, so I need to be one. I want and commit to that if that's something that I want to see myself. And then I think there's probably people in the house that will agree that I endured a lot of issues with my family, like making the career choices that I made, swerving and like trying to decide like what's actually like, what do I want to do and what is it that I want to do, and how's that connected to wanting to please my parents or the expectations of my parents and the legacy that they built for me generations ago for me to get here. And so I think for me, there's a lot of layers there that made me think, okay, well, if I'm going to bite the bullet and do what I want, the least I can do is kind of share those experiences so that others don't kind of have to suffer in silence kind of feeling. And just know that even if they don't know what they want to do, there's now people there to support, which is great. And so I'm happy to offer that to the folks in the room today. Thank you.
All righty. So yeah, this is quite layered. So I'm gonna try and nail it in this 3 to 5 minutes. So some of the different primary influences, and very much like Rizzhel's, like life has kind of influenced me in this path as to where I've gotten. You know, I think there was a question, I believe, from what was it? I believe somebody in Padlet, where it's talking about the different ways that we got here. And like Rizzhel, I also relate to the swerve because, you know, what I went to school for, first of all, I changed majors, I don't know how many times, leading up until like maybe 6 years into my college career even. But what I ended up choosing isn't where I am now. I think the various experiences that I had in the volunteer world when I started to volunteer with the Filipino American Arts and Cultural Festival, or PhilAmFest, maybe about like 8 years ago at this point, kind of led me down to this path. But also my interest in art and just kind of picking up like tech on the side, just as kind of things that I love to do. Those were the different skills that I inherited or learned upon the way that got me to where I am. And sometimes it's, I would say just follow the swerve, in my opinion. Like sometimes it leads you down paths that you don't know you're gonna take. Like, so when I first got into digital media, the meeting I had was not even with the person or was not even for the position at all. She just wanted to connect with the Filipino community. By the end of our conversation, Kandi was just jolly. By the end of our conversation, she was like, "Hey, do you want to apply for this new media position?" And I was like, "Okay." And like, I don't like academically, I don't have these skills, but on paper, I do. So I ended up in that position, and I was there for 5 years. And how I defined that success was whatever outcomes that I was aiming for in the role. I would hope that like I'm very lucky where I get to be in a position where I am able to hopefully influence policy change and make a difference in this world for, the things and the values that I believe in. And when I see it carried out, like there's successes, like for example, I would want to say, actually, let me talk about failures first. Like there's some bail reform that didn't go through, even though you worked really hard on it. I designed a billboard, that was rolling around the streets of Sacramento. But that, just because you do the work doesn't mean, and if you don't see what you think success looks like, doesn't mean you're not successful. Even if I thought that wasn't a successful journey, it doesn't mean that you're not. Because you could totally be successful. Other people might see you as more successful because we are our hardest critics. And I think that I'm very lucky that I get to have my values shared in the work that I do. So I think that generally answers most of the questions for now. I'm gonna pass it over to Kandi.
Oh my gosh, it is very, very multi-layered here. Thank you, Rizzhel and Virtual, for sharing so much of yourselves. When I think about these questions, I can't help but feel emotional because I feel a lot of gratitude when I reflect. And it's always important to reflect because it helps me really think about my journey, what things I've gone through to get me where I am today, what obstacles were in the way, what challenges I had to meet. And it definitely hasn't been easy till now. What really brought me to my career, definitely shifted many times, like both Riz and Virch has shared. Definitely major influences, of course, is coming from an immigrant family. Some experiences in my own family that were personal and hard to go through, and surviving. And then in my own community, surviving violence and many things has a lot to do with how I've managed through life, and didn't know where I was heading. I would say in terms of my career, in terms of music, my passion and influence is greatly influenced by my father, who collected records. And that played a huge reason to why I love music, because every Saturday morning we'd wake up and we'd hear, whether it's from Miles Davis to John Coltrane to the Beatles, and listening to music, it was a big part of my life. And that is what some of the best memories I would have in terms of growing up with a lot of the personal trauma that I had as a child. And those are the things I cling on to bring gratitude in my life for what I did have that was so, that kept me going. And then in terms of even in the music career, when I first started, I didn't start off as like, let me be a professional DJ and perform. I was originally a nursing major, which is no surprise as a Filipinx, And my mother told me, you don't want to be a nurse. And I was like, well, how do you know that? Because you don't want to be a nurse. And I said, okay, well, I'll be a writer. Well, you don't want to be a writer, that doesn't make any money. So those kind of things came up for me a lot. And I said, well, there's nothing I could do because I want to do what my heart follows. And then what drives me to follow. And I ended up DJing because I just found it passionate and was competing. And my mother, she said, "You love it. This is what you're meant to do, you know?" But I also knew there was something deeper in my music that I wanted to do. I didn't feel satisfied because I felt a calling and I didn't know then what I know now, you know? And I think a lot of it has to do with what my upbringing had, coming from a Black and brown community and experiencing the way communities looked out for one another. And I felt there was something more. And in music and hip hop, what taught me by a lot of the pioneers, it's it's everything that I do today. How I may be in a professional setting, but everything that I do is with the premise of a hip hop cipher and a hip hop praxis to what I believe and what I do. So when I say hip hop politicized me, it's because it really did. It brought me to where I am today as an artist, as a DJ, and what I do as an organizer, and how I even do public speaking. It is very much so. I come with a hip hop praxis and an aesthetic to it because it taught me everything I know. Hip hop's all about the freestyle, and hip hop feminism taught me how to be intersectional and how to be within the gray areas and to live within the contradictions, a term coined by my good friend Joan Morgan. So, you know, what I do today is very much with that hip hop lens, and how I approach life in general, how I work with folks, how I believe in my community, how I strive with all the imperfections. That's what the hip hop cipher teaches you, to be okay with the imperfections, to strive and survive, but also to thrive. Those are literally what you learn being in the cipher. And so for me, those are some of the greatest influences in my life, because it taught me how to be in a cipher with community and bring things to full circle at all times. I think that's where I would say my largest and biggest influences.
Wow. Thank you all for sharing in your insightful answers. I definitely like relate to you all, like just finding like where you're at or like what you want to do. Like it's so, you're so unsure about it, but I think that's just part of the process about learning. And I think what's great about here at Mesa is, and at community colleges, that we get to like, I feel like for me as well, like discovering myself, and like for many other people, it's like this is like the place where you can really like find what you want to do, your major, before going to like your dream school or and stuff like that. And I really appreciate what like Kandi said, like that calling. I feel like there's just something that like eventually that calls to us, that like what we want to do. And yeah, I think Rizzhel wanted to add a little bit more about well, what you want to say. So
Yeah, I like how you were mentioning Kandi talking about like a calling, right? And I think for me, when I think of success, that shape has like dramatically changed the more that I've had conversations like this, and that my original vision of success was really built on this like white supremacy model of being the model minority, especially at these places where I went to school, right? Being the only person of color, I'm like, okay, I have to prove to like everyone that I could be here. And that I also had the weight of like, okay, well, my grandma like helped migrate her family so that my dad could work this job that maybe he didn't really like, so that I could go to school. And like, it's like all these layers of just like, okay, like the pressure of not failing, and what does failing look like? And I really had to flip that script for myself to become successful, to be like, okay, don't weigh myself down with all of that, but really think like, what's the gift that's coming from all of this, basically. And it's hard to a lot of, I think that vision, and Kandi and Birch, tell me, because I'm sure you have some kind of similar thing, right? It's like I have that vision in my mind. It's like, how do I help
Are we going in order or are we skipping around? I wasn't sure. I guess I'll go. Yeah, this question is so important. It's such an important question because I agree with Rizzhel in saying that the perfectionism is a falsity. I often say that it's stemming in white supremacy, and it's very ableist actually. When you're constantly striving to be this perfect, desirable model of like what is perfect, and success and measurement is based off of that model, and there's such thing as that. I actually take a model by Jay Shetty. I don't know if you ever listened to Jay Shetty's podcast, but I listened to some of it. And actually what I believe is very much that instead of setting these expectations on yourself, it teaches you how to also not make expectations off of other people. It's really harmful, actually. It's harmful to do to yourself. In the fact that instead of looking at expectations, I take more of a model of set a goal. And that goal could be anything. It could be like, I struggle with depression. So sometimes my goal tomorrow is going to be, I'm going to get out of bed today and I'm going to eat a bowl of cereal, or I'm going to get out the door, So sometimes my goal is small, and maybe the next day it's a little bit of a leap, maybe it's a little bit of like a movement here. And then the goal can change day to day. And then from there, I set a growth, set a growth. How am I growing in this spiritually, holistically, how am I setting a growth for on myself, and how do I see other people's growth instead of these expectations that can be harmful that you put on people? Because what happens is when you look at people in perfection and including yourself, you're creating a godlike image, and there's no such thing as this godlike image despite what we've been conditioned to believe. And these godlike image that I used to follow for myself was often like that when I was growing up. And I would feel like I'm a failure because the school system has taught me that if I don't get this certain grade, I am a failure and I didn't succeed in life and I didn't get a college degree. And oftentimes, even till this day, it's so conditioned because I don't have a college degree. I have an honorary doctorate, but I don't have a college degree. I didn't graduate out of college because when I decided I no longer want to be a nurse, I decided not to pursue it. And so oftentimes, even in the back of my mind, it's pursued. Like I have this feeling that feels icky, and I sit with that. Like, where does that sit? Because I didn't meet that expectation that my father had for me before he died, which was finish college. Because my dad didn't go to college, you know what I mean? And he wanted me to go to college, and I felt like I failed him, and I failed all expectations of the model of what it means to be successful. And so instead of that, I look at growth and I look at gratitude. And that's how I look at life, not with these measurements of success, but as opposed to, what are the things that I can feel really whole. And that's all of those things in terms of what do I do for the day-to-day and get to growth and find gratitude and blessings for even the things that are struggle.
I think I could piggyback on that. And in a way, this is very much answering I think the second question when we were talking about like this work that we do to uplift others, sometimes isn't always supported by the people that surround us. Sure, moms know best, but sometimes my mom doesn't even know what I do. Let's be real. When I was working at the ACLU, she thought I worked for a union, which is kind of interesting because we did have a union in the name. But like Kandi, I didn't get to finish college, throughout these various years. I ended up where I was at. But for me, I think it is regarding it's the process, right? If you look at games, like, or not even games, look at a puzzle. Once you finish the puzzle piece, or once you finish the puzzle itself, I guess that's the goal, right? To finish the thing. But it's the journey and how you got there. Like when you play a video game, yeah, you get to see the end credits, but it's really like all the things that you did and you enjoyed going through there to get to those end credits. So I often ask, even when my mom, she still wants me to pursue college, which, I do take classes here and there. But I ask her and I push back. I was like, what's the end goal? Like, what are we looking at? Like, what is the goal success? Does where I'm at right now, is that not success to you? So that's when I had to redefine success for myself as well. And, my pop is very proud of me, even though we don't necessarily meet the standard of what is typically defined as success in these white supremacist norms. We, I think, are able to kind of question the origins of what success is and like how we can redefine success now.
Yes, thank you all again for your answers. I definitely appreciate or relate a lot to Rizzhel and Kandi saying like to take like the small goals or the short term versus long term, like it's all like a part of the process. And what's it called? Just take those small victories, those like every day, even though it may not seem a lot, or it's just like in the moment, it may not be a lot to you. I think like overall or long term or in the future, like you'll look back at it and appreciate like yourself for taking those like those short term goals or those small victories. So yeah. So for the next question, what values do you consider the most important in this work that you do?
I think for me, the strongest value that I try to keep with me is authenticity. And I think that I've had so many different types of, I've knew from a young age that I wanted to be in a classroom setting. I think I was born and raised in the classroom since my parents were always at work. And so I'm very accustomed to the environment of being around my community and these learning spaces. And so I think, again, from my own lived experience, is how authentic was I able to be in my classroom. I can't ever say that I felt 100% because I always felt alone. I always felt like, oh, I'm gonna stick out, or like I'm just recalling today like an article that came out, like someone did an interview on me like in college, and the article was like titled exotic. And I was just like, oh, like, can I like I'm just like one of the people here that got interviewed, but it's just such a this really specific type of word to describe me, right? And so yeah, I just like, I don't think I ever had the space where I felt okay to just be who I was. And so yeah, I think the value that I really carry with me from that experience is whether I'm talking to someone in elementary school or someone in a college classroom, or if I'm talking I don't know, like I just like wherever I am, I feel like I want to be like my true and authentic self. And that's something that I hope that like through modeling that others can see like, oh, okay, like maybe being emotional could be the new professional, right? Or something like that. Like I feel like trying to liberate myself from that is what I get from being authentic, I think.
I could piggyback on that because I wholeheartedly agree. about authenticity being one of my values. I feel whenever I'm in a space, even if it's work-wise, if I don't feel like I can be me, it just feels gross, right? Like it feels icky almost. And then like you're not happy doing that thing anymore because you can't express yourself fully. You can't be accepted fully. You know, you're othered from the start almost. And if I feel like I can't be authentic, I already feel like that's not the right space for me. I think other values that guide the work that I do specifically, I think I am very keenly aware about my privilege. Being a cis male, I know that I get different things versus like some of the other people on the panel. You know, being a very able-bodied person, that I could do these things that, you know, other people cannot. And so the value that drives me in that sense is like I strive for more equity and like fairness. I would love a more just society for all of us, and especially those that, you know, maybe not have access in the same way that I do. I would love for me to open up more doors for people, especially those that look like me, or even those that don't look like me, right? Like I want to just make sure that we can all get this. Like whatever happiness looks like for you, I want that for you. You know, I think that once we are all in a space where we're able to enjoy joy, then we can be all happier together as a community. And sometimes that doesn't mean that's all of us. You know, there's some people that we can't convince that, you know, there should be some equity and fairness among us all. And I don't think I'm going to waste my time having those conversations with those folks anymore, because I don't value that. Like it's impeding my own joy and happiness. So, you know, I can move them to the left now, and that's okay with me. But I believe that, you know, principles of equity and fairness, and providing access to others, and also being in a space where I can be authentic, those are definitely a lot of the main values that guide me.
Yeah, I agree with and echo both what Chris and Rizzhel have shared. Pretty much authenticity. I mean, as an artist that performed often, whether it's as a DJ, on stage as a performer, or behind the stage in the booth, or as a theater performer, I'm so used to performing. Even public speaking is a performance, you know, and so at the same time, I remember in the music industry having gotten so tired of looking perfect all the time. You know, you have to kind of fit a particular image, even with my crews that I've been part of, wanting to package us and sell us to be this image that we didn't want to be. So we defied that. We turned down multiple record deals and millions of dollars of record deals we've turned down because we didn't want to be pushed into become something that we didn't want. And those were tough choices we had to make, you know. And it has everything to do with authenticity. We didn't want to, and there's no judgment for me, even when others make certain choices, you know. But I think personally for me, I knew that I wanted more in life, and that's where I felt that calling. And it was a calling for authenticity. It was also calling for to be around community. I knew that I never felt in community at times, you know. And for me, which is why, like, a couple of years back, many years back, when I was shifting out of the industry itself, I remember writing my first artist statement in how I wanted to lead my life in my career, in my music and my creativity. And it was one of the lines in my statement is saying, in tune with the sounds of the street, who plays the beat of what the people speaks. And what that meant for me was that I needed to have a purpose. It had to hold conviction, and it needed to really be community led. And in that, a place of authenticity is finding that space of vulnerability for me. It meant I had to do the inner work, not just follow community, but there was a lot of inner work to do. And there's no destination per se. It's a constant practice of inner work. I had to find healing in myself, and I'm constantly working on healing. I don't believe healing ever ends. I think it's a constant practice to get to that place, or that not necessarily sense of destination, but there's so many things we're going through. I mean, we're not out of a pandemic. We're still in a pandemic. I'm constantly healing from the trauma of this past year and the many more lives being taken from us right now. And so, and we're still healing even long before the pandemic, all the generational trauma that our ancestors have felt. And there's research that proves that generational trauma is in our DNA. So, I'm constantly in a healing space, and I knew that I wanted to be around my peoples, you know? And so for me, when I do my music, when I am creative, it has to be centered around that, my values. I want to learn how to live my values, not just in performing it, saying it, acting it. Any conscious artist can put out an album and do a performative album, but how are you living that value in your everyday life? And it's not going to be perfect, but I think it's not, we're not striving for perfection. Again, we're striving for growth and freedom. That's where I want to go. It's about feeling free and being free and getting to freedom together in community. So that's what my values are centered on.
Thank you so much again. I really relate to that. I really appreciate how you all talked about what you're passionate about and what you want to do, and how there were so many of these outside voices or these things that were telling you like no, or saying other stuff, or they want you to do something that you don't want to do, that you're not passionate about, but they're taking up all this like negative space, or saying all this negative energy, or saying all these negative things, but to I feel that you just look past that, because they're wasting your time and energy, when you could be doing something more powerful or valuable with that energy, and put that somewhere else in the world, or help someone else, or do what you're passionate about or what you love. So I really appreciate that. So for our next question, was this work you do to uplift others always supported by the people who surrounded you? I know for sure you talked a little bit about that, but yeah.
I could start off then again. So as I kind of hinted at, yeah, sometimes it's not supported by my immediate family, which is okay. That's fine. I don't need them to necessarily understand the work that I do, as long as they love me and support me in other ways. That's cool. I'm good with that. My friends, my chosen family, yeah, they'll support me in the work that I do. It's kind of tricky not having them understand the work that I do as well. So I find colleagues in like other organizations that they're my professional family, right? So you get sometimes, you get to choose who you surround yourself with and who supports you in that sense. Because if I'm not feeling that support, then aside from other family ties or ties that we chose, I don't know what else is connecting me to you. So I think that, it's not always supported by those around me, but that's also okay, because if I kind of bent to what they wanted me to do, I would have been a doctor, been an engineer, been a nurse, joined the military, or like all those other things that I didn't feel like resonated with my soul, So I think that's where I sought more solace, in the chosen family and the ones that I get to commiserate with, even. So although it's not always supported, you could find support, and also build, do that inner work, so you can also support yourself from time to time when you need it, but also I'm hoping that you have people that can pour into you when you pour into others, because you can't continue to pour into others if your cup is empty. And then I hope you find ways to, refill your cup.
It's funny because I'm looking through all of the people in my I'm like thinking, I mean, my mom was supportive. I mean, I think from the start, I think it's when I decided not to continue with nursing school, it was, I was starting to tour. I was already starting to tour a lot at the age of 18 years old, and traveling the world. And, of course, my mom was concerned about making income and having a good money that comes in, because as someone who came here from the Philippines and she struggled financially and would send money home to her family, she knew what that life is, and she didn't want me to struggle. She wanted me to find work, but she also wanted me to find joy in my work, because that's why she knew I didn't want to be a nurse, and she enjoyed my DJ career, and she would often tell me, if your dad was still alive, he'd probably love to go on tour with you. I remember my very first tour. My first show at my dad. I was remembering my dad, and I was like, I know he would love to be here with me, because he would be with some of the concerts I've done. He would have been on stage. I don't know. He'd probably fly off stage. That's what my dad probably would have done. But I definitely think that there's been hardships, of course, because again, it goes back to like, how are you financially able to survive? And being in this music career, it had its ups and downs. I had to always have a job. I didn't, all my tour life, and I've done some pretty big tours, traveled with some pretty big artists, but I've always had a job, and I was smart about it, because you got to pay rent, And I remember when I had my first apartment, and you couldn't just be a DJ and not worry about what you're going to pay for and where you're going to live and things. And at the time, I was younger, which is ended up why I ended up having children much later in my life, because a good majority of my years, I spent a lot of the time on the road and touring and careering, and didn't have children earlier on. And so by the time I ended up having children, I was already in my mid 30s, and it wasn't an easy pregnancy for me at all, for both of my children's pregnancies. So it was a lot to think about who supported me, because when I think about who really supported my career, it was really, or anything that I ever did, is it always goes back to the people who understood what I wanted in life despite all the struggles. And that was always my mom and my sister, because when I was broke, they were the first to help me, and then also community, because when I was broke too, the community looked out for me. When I had a major heart surgery, and I had gotten really sick in 2012, fundraisers across the United States started for me. And I really didn't want a fundraiser, to be honest. I was like, no, because it meant putting my quote unquote business out there. It meant being vulnerable. And I was afraid of that, because you have to understand, prior to that in the music industry, I never showed, it was all performance. I never showed the imperfections of my life. And I was really nervous about doing that. And then I said, you know what, I'm tired of performing. It goes back to Lauryn Hill's song, which I talked about the last time I saw you all. That's why one of my favorite songs of hers is I Get Out. Because she, if you see her unplugged, her unplugged album performance and on TV, it really talked about she just got tired of performing. I felt the same way. That's why I really resonate with Lauryn Hill. I just got really tired of like being perfect. And when Color Lines put out an article on me, when it got publicized, I was like, oh my God, now my business is out there nationally around the world, that I got all these medical conditions and I got all this mental health struggles, and the whole world was going to know it now, and there was no more hiding. And I was like, you know what, taking off the mask, that I'm done with that, because there is no such thing as perfection. And I was really like, it's time for me to live in truth of who I am and all the struggles, because I didn't get here just because it was perfect and I hit all these measurements, and it was community that got me there, and it was community that looked out for me. Even when I got sick a couple of weeks last month, someone was like, let me set up a meal train for you. I was like, I don't need a meal train. I kept saying I don't need a meal train, but everyone was like, no, you need a meal train. You got 2 kids, you're working from home and you're homeschooling. Let's set up a meal train for you. And you know what? It was the best thing ever. I had the best pho like every single day and all kinds of soup. So, I didn't necessarily need it, but my soul needed it. And it was really nice to have that. And community looked out for me.
Should I be answering that question too, or are we going? Okay, cool. Yeah, I think always echoing, I think, from Kandi and Ferge, but yeah, I had a really difficult time. I mean, my parents are always supportive in the larger scope of things, but when I have to get into details about art, they always have this like, like, what is this foreign language that she's talking about? They're just like, I need to know how much it's going to cost, and do you have the money that you need to do it, and how much do I need to help you? And so these are like the logistics of like yeah, of my parents, and like in the efforts to help the dream come true. And so yeah, I think I really relied on my or how do I sorry, I'm trying to like figure out how I work this out in my head, but I think that my parents were always my backbone, right? So like Kandi said, like if I was broke, if I was really like, oh, I don't have food, like my mom's gonna be like, what do you mean you don't have food? Like, come over right now, you know? And so I always had that backbone of my parents, but I think the emotional support, which I think is just as valuable, right? The emotional support, the days where you're just like, what am I doing? Is this all worth it? Like all this, like I remember at first trying to go to my parents with those kinds of questions. I had a really hard day at class, and it was literally like the day that Trump had gotten elected. And I told my dad, hey, I'm really scared to go to class. I'm scared of like, I don't know if I'm prepared. So like, there's just a lot, like this day is going to be harder than normal. And my dad was just like, that was the job you picked. And he kind of like walked away. And I was like, no, like emotional support. And he was like, what do you want me to tell you? He's like, you picked the job, It's like, you wanted to do, like, this is what you went to college for. This is what we paid for, like all this stuff. Like he gave me all these not excuses, like answers. He's like, this is the truth, right? This is why we did this. And I was like, okay, I need to go talk to my friends. Like those are going to be the people that are going to help me recover that emotional side of myself. And so I think knowing your support and how people support you is really important. So I know, like, okay, if I need a certain type of support, I'm going to go to my mom and my dad. Okay, this is how my friends help me fill my cup. This is how my family helps me fill my cup. And like what Rizzhel said, I wrote it down. It's like, you can't keep pouring out for people if your cup is empty, right? And so yeah, I think for me, something that I try to take with even like the feedback from Kandi and Rizzhel is like knowing who you could reach out to for your support system is just as important as know, like if you don't know the answer, like you want to know who you could like lean on, because you don't want to be always by yourself. That could be really hard on you.
Yes, thank you so much again. I definitely relate a lot to you all, like in like finding yourself or your path, or like if your family is like always like not going to be like, they'll be there for you, but in like certain ways, because like sometimes it's not like 100%, like for some families, like they want you to do like certain things, or for other families they're like 100% accepting in what you do or where you're at. And it's kind of funny how that Kandi and Rizzhel was just talking about like, oh, when I'm broke, I need food. My mom's willing to make me like, a meal. And it's really funny, like how like there's so many like of my, let's say like other family members, like my aunties and uncles, like, it's okay, you just stay at home as long as possible. Free food. You don't have to pay for rent. But yeah, I really appreciate how you just talked about how you're supported and how you're supported. So for the next question, um, what mistakes, problems, failures are inevitable? How do you fall forward and keep yourself motivated? What do you think is needed to endure these hardships and continue this path of fighting inequities and pursuing shared liberation? I know if it's kind of a lot of a question, but yeah.
Yeah, it's an important question. I think that when you're doing something, a lot of the times that someone hasn't done before you, mistakes are inevitable, right? And so I've made a lot of them, and I'm learning, like, what does accountability look like? What does it like to learn from these experiences together instead of marginalize myself and others more, right? And so the goal is to grow together. I love Kenny saying that it's our goal is to grow together and to thrive together. So yeah, I think that ties me back to values, utilizing your values in the space and making sure. I know for me, the learning is side by side, and it takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of investment in each other to kind of build. I don't know if any space is completely safe, but to feel that safety feeling. But yeah, and I think that what keeps me kind of working towards that is that image of myself in school several times of just feeling totally lost. I don't know how many offices I sat outside crying, where I was I don't know where to go. And I couldn't call my parents because they're just I remember one time they're just you spent all this money to go to college. What do you mean you want to come home? It's okay, that's not the kind of question, or you don't say that kind of statement to mom and dad when they're helping with the finances, or just, yeah, so yeah, I just feel just being transparent. And I'm experiencing that right now. And a lot of the things that I'm learning in my first year of management, at the organization where I work, hey, I need to be transparent. I haven't done this before. Can we learn this together? Or oh, this is uncharted territory, right? We haven't experienced this as a team. I know for us, we're trying to practice horizontal management. And that's very new in a lot of nonprofit spaces. And it's inevitable, there's questions that come up, and maybe kinks in the idea, right, that we want to work out. But in the end, it's there is no model. I haven't seen another model where we could actively try side by side, how to do that. Or if there is, please tell me, someone out there. But we're figuring it out, and I think that it's a blessing and a curse, to try something new, because you feel liberated, but at the same time you feel the weight of the new. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of work that goes into that liberation. And I think the strongest part is making sure your team and your family and your community stays strong, because you're never going to finish it overnight, right? And so I think that's probably the way that I try to help overcome, building an army, right? Building a crew for people to fight together, so when someone needs to rest, they actually can and come back stronger.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I was sharing before, and setting that growth and gratitude kind of practice, and setting goals. But it's also that accountability that Rizzhel's talking about, because I think the first thing is to get the idea of bad versus good out, this binary of bad versus good and evil versus innocent. And when we are able to do that, then we know that we're already flawed people. We make mistakes, and um, and it's going to be like that, you know. And also acknowledging our own feelings and the complexities of it all. So something I tell my 5-year-old is, and a practice for them to start with is hand over heart. You know, I'm upset, but that's okay. There is another way. And it's a practice that I'm trying to instill in them because I want them to know that their feelings are valid and it's okay to feel the way they feel. And with the way we show we're upset, we can share how we're upset and say how we're upset. But when it gets to the point where you're impacting someone in a way that's harmful, with their sibling, for example, is to teach them that there's another way to share your upset. And there's another way to tell someone, and not necessarily to tell them, but to teach them and to guide and to model. And it's not easy for me. I am not coming here saying parenting is easy, because it is a constant practice, and it teaches me patience as well, which is hard in a very fast-paced world. We make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. And I think when we get the idea out of our head that there's this bad versus good, evil versus innocent, then we could come really even more authentic in owning when we've done harm and naming that harm, and not just saying sorry, but what are the changes we're going to create and what is the growth we're going to do together. Where's the growth we're going to do together as a community, as an individual, as partners in this work, as partners in our relationships? What is the growth we're going to take? And when we do that, we can find ourselves. You know, it's not saying that you can't call someone out or call someone in, either or. It's not linear, the practice of accountability. But it's really about, you know, really finding a pathway regardless, you know, and believing in one another. Sometimes it means we need to take a break, some folks, though, and that's valid too. You know, I've gone through some really toxic relationships, friendships, partnerships, and I needed to put my boundary. And yeah, it goes, Rizzhel, it is safe the word. You know, sometimes I think about maybe there's no such thing as that, right? So maybe it's creating safer communities as best as possible, safer spaces wherever we can. And, you know, setting those guidelines and knowing that we're going to make mistakes, and how do we hold space for that and hold space for one another. And sometimes, you know, we have to make, you know, not dispose of people, which are two different things. You know, accountability and disposability. We just don't want to throw anyone away. I look back at my life before I became this reflective. I was a harmful person. If you all knew me like 30 years ago, you'd be like, yeah, right, it's not you. Check back on my folks back in New York, they'll tell you stories. And I look back at my life in my past, and I feel sad that we can't make room for each other at times for those learning edges. I'm grateful for the people that made room for my learning edges, and also grateful for the ones that knew their own boundaries and knew that we might not be friends anymore, and I respect that too. And sometimes we have to let go when we need to let go. So I think that's how I live through, you know, owning those mistakes, and that's how I feel like we get to freedom together. And sometimes it goes through what Rizzhel earlier on said, that, you know, we're not going to change everybody. We can't. We could only change ourselves, you know. But some folks are going to get there when they get there, and we have to trust that they'll find their way there eventually, because like literally capitalism leads to where capitalism leads, and we're going to have no choice but to resist. That's the ultimate truth of it.
They both Rizzhel and Kandi spoke so much, so many things that I deeply resonate with, like just as we head towards this path of liberation, like we are trying our best to create this world that, you know, many of us have never seen before, or don't have examples that we could immediately point to. Maybe there might be some indigenous communities that know what, shared community spaces kind of look like, or what the different things that we're trying to create. Or when we talk about like mistakes that we make, what does justice look like in that sense? I often think about when I do make mistakes, and as we talk about like how failure is inevitable, I said it many times before that, like, losses, if you learn from your losses, they're not losses, they're just learnings, or what is typically qualified as a loss. But also, I think when it comes to the mistakes, I think you all need to be on the same page as what a mistake is, and can we co-create together, right? Like, that's the things that continue to push me through, is like, do I have a community that supports me? Do I have people that support me in order to move forward? Like, if I don't understand the thing that you're trying to call me out for a mistake, I'm going to keep on making the same, what you might consider a mistake, even though I thought it was fine. But there is difficulty and weight, as Rizzhel said, in trying to do this new thing. But I would hope that the people that I'm co-creating with understand what the struggle looks like and can help us learn from each other, or be held in community with each other in order to not cancel each other out, but have a shared language and understanding as to, like, how do we do this together if we need to do it together. And then what Kandi said about boundaries is huge, in the sense that, like, if I know that we are at a space that we can't, find some kind of resolution, if we need to kind of break ties or dip from that relationship, then so be it. And hopefully, things can be done in a non-toxic way, where you can go your separate ways and have that understanding. But I think to endure these different hardships, it's having the people you trust, and also trust yourself. I think that's huge too, and there's times when you just don't, because you continue to think you make this. So for me right now, I think that I'm kind of messing up at work, and I believe that I'm making these mistakes because I'm holding myself to a different standard, I think. But then my supervisors and the people that support me, they're like, no, you're doing excellent, XYZ, this and this and that. I'm like, oh, okay. So even if I feel I'm making mistakes, sometimes, they're not. And they're just things that you can continue to grow and learn from. And I just hope to continue to learn from the different problems and failures that I may encounter, and just continue from there with the people that I know will continue to support me and care for each other.
Wow, that's just so much to unpack there. I really appreciate like all three of you. There is a lot of points that I really connected to. So like, for example, for like mistakes and problems of failures, like I've been learning a lot as a peer navigator. And what I've learned is that they're not mistakes, they're learning moments. And there's always something to gain out of it. You may not think it out of it at the time, but you'll definitely grow from it. And that, like, you may think that you made a mistake or that your work isn't perfect, but I think what I've learned is that it doesn't really matter. Like, as long as it gets done, it doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as it gets done, that's what really matters. And I think also that I really relate to what was being said about, like, what Kandi said about boundaries. Like, sometimes you just need to set that up for yourself, and cut that, the toxic people out of your life, or those really negative things. And really also, what's it called? Like, trying to keep yourself motivated. It can be hard at times, but I think just surrounding yourself with people that support you, or doing the things that you're really like passionate about, can really bring you back. And yeah, so going back to like the civic engagement project, I would say that like just if you're ever like feeling down or like you're really struggling, like I would reach out to like your friends or like your group members to, you know, let them know or like lean on each other if you ever need help with your projects. And so for our next question, what opportunities do you have available with your organizations for our scholars to support for their civic engagement projects?
Are you allowed to share screen, Andrew? I didn't ask, but
Oh, no, I can't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's cool. I'll just share the links. I had mentioned earlier that I work at the Aja project, which I really love. We work through documentary programs for folks to kind of, you know, bring the topics that are interesting to the table, right? And so we have a program called the Civil Liberties Project that we basically had students working side by side with local artists like Andrea Chung, Luisa Martinez, Dana Washington, and they went through all these different social movements. And then at the end of the program, they essentially worked on an art piece. So it's very like in parallel with what you're doing in your class. And so I would even argue like any program at Aja is really kind of connected to the same type of work that you're doing. Ultimately, how do we use art as a vehicle to help share our story, right? And we want the stories to come from you, and I think that's really important. I know Kandi's been in one of our programs as well. First, we got to loop you in at some point, but it's another thing that I really like about it is it's intergenerational, right? And I think that at first we were really focused on serving youth, but we're realizing that to serve the youth, we need our community, right? And so we're having a lot of our programs with people from all different types of generations. And so if there's anybody that's interested, would be great to, yeah, just like even do like a walkthrough at the space and just learn more about the individual programs. And I'll put some links in the chat, but yeah, I feel like it's like really similar to what y'all are doing here, except for not necessarily at school, right? And so I think for me, my biggest fear of graduating was like, what do I do with these programs? I even have students in programs now at Aja that are like, I'm about to graduate. Like, what do I do? Like, I still need this. So like, should I still stay in school? Like, should I try to like stay in school for one more year? But yeah, I think the plan is like, how do we build those opportunities after, you know, we're done with school and make sure that things like that are still available to the general public. So yeah,
Rizzhel,
yeah,
if you want to screen share, you can. I have your website pulled up too, so I can screen share if you like.
Oh, here. I'm just gonna share like one specific program, the Civil Liberties program. I thought it was cool because they ended up having their individual exhibitions all over the town. And so one of them had a show, Famo had her show at You Belong Here, Christy had her show at the Japanese Friendship Garden, and then Natalia had her show at the front. And so you could go through and actually watch a virtual walkthrough of the event, and you could see this like awesome zine that was produced by the students, the fellows in the program. We hope to offer it again next year. The fellows actually, so they went through this like 16-week course, similar to like going to class at school, right? And they were also given a $500 stipend to create an artwork that they could then share to the public. And so, yeah, I'm inviting you to check out this zine and then to see the featured artists, Famo, Natalia, and Christy. And I just really loved this program because once the students, so we had like fellows that actually took the class. And then later on, like Christy ended up being a teacher. And then Christy ended up also helping us with public installations. And so it's really beautiful to see kind of the interests and passions of each individual student kind of come to life. And so yeah, definitely invite us to your exhibition at the end of the year. I'd love to like share it with my staff.
I think on my end of things, it would have been easier if I was at the ACLU San Diego, which is more localized. But I also feel like I am very fortunate to be in a space where my supervisors and the people I report to are very supportive of the work that I do. So I feel like actually I'm very confident that my purpose in this life is to be a conduit for folks, to channel their most authentic selves and their passions. So if there's a way that I can, if you'd like to meet with me, that's absolutely fine. You can shoot me an email or whatever, and we can find ways where I can connect you to ways of, I don't know, either accelerating your work or just putting it on different platforms. If you'd like to find ways to for your project to get on another platform, definitely connect with me. And I think there'd be ways that we can do it. Yep, I can be a conduit. I can do it.
Yeah, you're all making me want to work on a project together. That's I already have a billion projects and I can never finish them
I'm
sometimes.
so down to collaborate all the time with you two.
I know. Let's do it. That's the calling bringing us together here. Um, oh, I like that. Can do it. Yes. Um, well, in my organization currently, right now, Asian Solidarity Collective, we do a lot of organizer trainings. We're going to be launching we do a lot of internal trainings and we do a lot of political ed workshops, but starting next year, we're going to be launching an organizing school for movement leaders here in San Diego. So I'm really excited about that. So if anyone wants to train how to be an organizer, definitely go and check out our website. You could join our ASC membership as well to get more involved. It's really exciting because we do a role progression tactics where our members really either trade skill, cross trade, and we do a lot of trainings internally. We just finished our spring series of our Organizer Trainings 101. We took a pause. We were about to do 102 for the fall, but our organization believes in our community care, so we're taking a break this fall and not doing a training this fall internally, and we're in the spring we'll revisit that. So but we do a lot of these and we invite a lot of speakers. We don't publicize all the time, but we get a heck of a lot of friends that come in to do a lot of code trainings with us. So it's really exciting how people get to visit with us and you get to learn with whether local community folks or folks across the United States to train. We even had Ruby Ibarra visit us with our organizers during their graduation. So it's really exciting. So if you're interested in that, come join us. And then we do, for me personally, I mean, there's always something I'm always down to collaborate to with good folks doing amazing things. I did do a project with Aja. I was trying to look for the photo on it. I think I found a photo on it. It was so amazing. You could go visit at Liberty Station. And it's still there. You could look at it. I was so honored to be invited to the space and do to write together and then build together and learn together with all these amazing fierce writers, and it was so much fun. Yes, so I was really excited about doing that, and I'm always thirsting for a lot of other projects because I'm as an organizer, that's another part of my life that gets to be creative. A lot of people don't see organizing as creative, but it is. It's so creative. And when you fuse both together, your art and your organizing work together, it's really powerful. I have a book that I co-edited. It's dropping in this coming, the preliminaries coming in the spring next year. I co-edited with Dr. Amanda Amaru and my good friend Jen Soriano from the Bay Area. And it took 8 years to work on this book. It's the first of its kind in 10 years since Panay Power dropped. in 1995, where the term Panayism was coined. This is my second book I've co-edited, so I'm really excited for this book to drop that we did together, and it was 8 years in the making. It's on Panay activism, called Closer to Liberation. We're really excited about the preliminary dropping, and then the final edition will come in this fall of 2022. So look out for spring of 2022, because you'll see it. It's going to be used in Amanda's class as a preliminary. So I'm excited about that book, but I'm always working on books. Right now I'm working on an organizer book right now. I'm actually writing it. So it's going to be a long working project for that as well. But I really want to write on my work on creativity, a couple of things. So maybe my friends here want to help see my dream come into fruition. I've been wanting to write a play. It's been a couple of years. I used to direct a play. So I'm really excited to write a play together and do it here. But, you know, I have a billion projects to work on. So maybe there's some things here that can emerge from these conversations that we have. Yes, I know. Me and Mickey have talked about it briefly several times. You know, but life is a lot of stuff, busyness. It's always about a project at a time, you know, and you know how it works.
Yes. I know how, I definitely understand how busy life gets. Yes. Thank you all again for your amazing answers and insight. So next we wanted to transition into our student questions, but you all had such amazing questions, but unfortunately we are out of time for today. But our panelists will answer your questions through the Padlet later when they have the time or when they have the chance. So don't worry about that. But yeah, so to close our panel for today, we would like to highlight what has been happening this past year due to COVID-19, the pandemic, and the recent rise in anti-Asian Pacific Islander hate. So to end, our last question is, how do you navigate through racism, sexism, or discrimination in your workplace?
I could try and go first. It's tricky because in the past 6 years, I've been in spaces where we are allowed to talk about this thing. In my current organization, we outright name like white supremacy, and we advocate for abolition, which is not common in a lot of spaces. So I recognize my privilege in that sense. So to overcome it, I think it's tricky because I do have that privilege of having others that have the shared language with me. I think when I'm in spaces where I don't have that same language, even like in family spaces, I have to do that in a sense where I ask more questions, honestly. Like I ask more questions as to what their line of thinking looks like, and then I challenge it if I feel it needs to be challenged. If I feel it doesn't align with my values, then I'm like, well, why do you think that way? Because I believe in X, Y, Z. And then hopefully they'll meet it or understand it. And if not, then I might have to leave that particular situation. But again, in the workspace for me, I'm very comfortable and lucky that we advocate for abolition and all these other things that I align with. But in other spaces, I would definitely ask questions, find out what their values are, and then challenge them if need be. And then also advocate for yourself and what your needs are. Because if they can't meet them, then existing is hard. Existing is already hard. So existing in these spaces where you don't feel you fit, it might needs to change. So I would try to advocate for yourself as best as you can.
Yeah, I'm feeling Furch on that really hard because I think when I was starting to unlearn and like break myself away from this perfection mold, a quote that really stuck with me was someone was like, "Riz, you're making career suicide." Like I remember hearing that, and I was just like, "Well, I'm like, do like what choice? Like, there's not that many choices left for me." So it's just like, how can I? I need to actually be true to myself. And so when I think about how I navigate it, I mean, I think I could probably learn how to be a little bit more graceful, but I'm a pretty crass person. So I've been in a lot of spaces where I'm like, hey, can I talk to the manager? Like, hey, I need to talk to the dean. Like, I need to, like, I have to take the, so like when I went to school, I learned the hierarchy, right? And so what I had to do is flip the script. So I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be like scared of the dean. I shouldn't be scared of my chair. I shouldn't be scared of my teacher. I need to tell those people what I need from them because I'm paying a shit ton of money to be here. And I need to make sure that I'm getting the education that I hope for. And if I'm not, that I'm at least getting to say the things that I want to say in this space where I'm paying for this privilege to be here. Right. And I really had to flip that script because I came from a space where I was like, I'm first generation. Like, I just like, I'm so lucky to be here. I just need to shut up and just like do the work and like keep my head down and just, and I think that was like, yeah, that's how I really was able to kind of combat that and find where I wanted to be. And I think Rizzhel said that really well, where it's like, there were some places where, you know, I fought and I fought and I fought and I realized, well, we just don't have the same mission. And I had to ask myself, why am I here? And that's like a really important question, a guiding question, right? Like, why am I here? And if there's not something feeding me, I'm not able, like, it's not doing me justice to like, I can't help other people in this space, right? And so that's not to me, that's not to say that somebody else could like be really good in that position. Maybe not me, right? But it's all about finding that place that you belong. And so I can't remember where I got this, but it's about, I think, picking a place, like even if it's small, you're like, I'm going to make an investment here because I feel like I could grow and cultivate and add some positive energy to this space. And then if it grows, it can grow. And I don't know, like, I just feel, yeah, like if I'm able to like cultivate that in one space, it'll help others like radiate it out. And I don't have to think about it as this big, huge thing that I have to do all by myself, right? It's about like doing it together.
Yes, Rizzhel, it's a little at a time, you know. I've been in institution spaces that I've worked at where I cried every day for like 3 years, you know, and it's not that I would be silent. I'd had to kind of pick and choose which moments I'd call out on or call in on, you know, for my own care, but also making sure I'm not complicit in things. You know, it was constant navigation of that, and that can be really exhausting. The navigating part, like, all right, when do I say something, when do I don't, when is the right time, how do I know they're going to react, what are they going to say, you know, and it's never been easy to navigate it all, and I also understood what is my threshold, because then I know when it's time to go, you know. When, so I have worked in those spaces where I didn't necessarily have the privilege in what Rizzhel was talking about, to and you would think, because a lot of it was rooted with a lot, they were very well studied in social justice and its idea of it in theory, but in practice, they didn't have that practice. And so it's one thing to have really studied it, but to actually practice and live values of it, and how do you bring that and flip the hierarchy in your spaces. They did not have the practice on. And as someone who worked as an assistant as opposed to in a position, I was always questioned because I didn't have the, I guess, the notoriety to them, or the credits for them, or the degree, or whether it's, you know, wasn't valued at times, you know. So it was at times really challenging, but also I stayed for a lot of reasons too, because I believed in pushing for the things for the community that I was part of there, on that spaces that I've worked to push it where as best as I can for as long as I can. And then I knew what my threshold was, and I said, all right, it's time for me to leave and hope for the best that other folks come in to do that work. So yeah, I don't know if I necessarily answered the question, but I do know that I've definitely worked in spaces in which was really hard. in trying to bring and challenge, but also knowing that I couldn't be complicit and live my values in those spaces too.
I'm just like blown away because like we've answered and so many bigger of the oh here am I good?
It's coming out a little bit, Andrew.
Kayla, am I good?
Yeah, I think you're cutting out like Rizzhel said. Maybe stop your video. Oh, we lost them altogether. Oh,
The fight's daily, even technology. It's a struggle. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
thank you,
Echo that.
Rizzhel, Kandi, and Ferch. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, there's Andrew. He's back.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hello?
you're back, Andrew. Yes,
Can you hear me
There you
now?
go.
Am I live still?
yes,
Yeah, you're good to
you're
go.
good.
Okay. What was I saying? Anyways, yeah, I just want to thank you all for coming out today, and sharing your insight, your thoughts, and what you've done throughout your life and for the community. And I just hope that everyone like learned something from today, and connected back, and just connecting back to the bigger picture of your civic engagement project and the student summit. I didn't get to say it earlier, but these are all great opportunities. I hope you all save the links. I'm sure Dorilla will probably post them later, but those are all great projects from Kandi, Rizzhel, and Rizzhel. They're all doing such great, amazing work in art, activism, community work, and stuff like that. So I hope you can see like the bigger picture later, for your projects. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you for bringing the three of us together. I'm sure we'll be crossing paths here pretty soon. We just need like a couple more hours in each day to get the work done.
Andrew, thank you for being an amazing moderator. And well, I guess you're kind of like a kuya now. So you're a peer navigator, liaison to Kapwa, and you've done an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate this space so much.
That's so awkward. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. I just hope I'm not going to get kicked out mid talking, but yeah, there's a lot of love being dropped in the chat for the panelists and for the moderator. So as you exit, if you want to leave them some love, that would be amazing. And thank you so much for being here. Don't forget you have homework due tonight. My class. Bye. So long, farewell. Oh, I think I froze. Oh, wait, was there a survey? I think you can just send them through the registration, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're doing a separate one for Kapwa.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes, Aliciana, you can go. Y'all got papers to write.
Awesome. Yeah.
Aw, everyone's so sweet.
Good luck on your work, on the work, everyone. School's so hard, so thank you for powering through it. And we need more people of color in the classroom, so thank you
Yes.
for joining the fight.
I'm kind of glad this was on a Monday, so I'm hoping all this energy is going to power me through the rest of the week.
I know, right?
Yeah.